Chris and kindness. I knew they were trolls, but they had good intentions, and they were genuinely kind individuals. I'm not listening to your bullshit. Chris showing that he prefers kindness over reason. For I am the kind and compassionate Christine Chandler. Chris, proclaiming his kindness and his ability to roll his R's. Despite all of his moments of rage, death threats, lies, and yuck, Chris does have a soft side, and he's not afraid to show it. As of recently, he will more often than not be motivated to act kind towards others, even towards complete strangers, due to his autism and upbringing making it difficult to empathise with others. These attempts are often awkward and occasionally cross the line to disrespect. Chris has also shown a number of times that due to his facade of kindness to others, he can very easily be manipulated by other people, as he rarely questions anyone's intentions beforehand, as that would be the unkind thing to do. This shows that Chris seems to have a stronger appeal to just being kind to others for its own sake, rather than so that he could be more approachable, as he cannot distinguish when it's most appropriate to accept an offer versus politely decline it. Origins of his kindness. Given his obsession with fictional media, and what we know about his formative years, it's very likely that Chris learned much of his ideas of how to act towards others from watching television as a child. Note that Chris once stated on a school assignment that he considers TV as an effective part of child rearing. Among 80s cartoons like Transformers and the Smurfs, he has specifically cited Care Bears, and especially The Adventures of the American Rabbit, his first role model before Sonic the Hedgehog, as influences. This might also explain why Chris preaches the importance of virtues he has demonstrably failed to live up to for years, and still does. Sees the world with simplistic black and white morality, resists anyone telling him hard truths because they don't sound nice and sympathetic enough, easily latches onto anything seemingly beneficial to him without a second thought, and so forth. His tendencies toward binary perception and poor perception of reality presumably didn't help one bit either. Chris and his morality. Like his beliefs on religion and gender, Chris's stance on morality is difficult to interpret. Chris often claims that he is kind, good-natured, saintly person that doesn't deserve scorn. To a certain extent he's right, but for all the wrong reasons. Despite what one may think about Chris, the reality is that he's relatively harmless. The reality is that he's relatively harmless and is somewhat capable of distinguishing right and wrong. But this is only scratching the surface, as Chris's selfishness and naivety often turn out to be the main culprits behind him doing immoral actions, rather than true malevolence. One infamous example of this behaviour is when he foolishly drew and uploaded SheCameForQuick.jpg onto Encyclopedia Germanica, as a means to combat all the pictures of ducks and pickles he found on the site, as well as to prove his straightness, not thinking about how Megan might respond to being depicted in such an undignified manner in a shoddily drawn piece of porn. Megan, who was just looking for any reason to stop talking to Chris, was understandably revolted. However, what cements the fact that his naivety was partly responsible is how Chris tried to explain to Megan what happened in the picture itself, thinking that she was inexperienced with sex and didn't understand what was going on, rather than the obvious fact that she was depicted in such a demeaning situation, and that Chris obviously wants to pound her. Whoever Chris acts kindly to depends on who he would classify as his friends and his enemies. As someone gets in the way of whatever he wants to do, or he shifts the blame on someone else for his own fails, Chris will deem that person as a troll that wants nothing more than to make him miserable, showing very little respect of whoever inconvenienced him. Whoever Chris doesn't classify as a troll, or feels temporarily join the side of the trolls, are his friends. Typically, Chris will attempt to befriend internet celebrities and staff members of the media he enjoys. Motivations for doing good, love quest and gal pals. While socializing with his alleged pals, Chris always takes the time to act as kind as possible to them, to the point where it becomes downright disturbing. Unsurprisingly, Chris has used social media as a means of continuing his love quest and finding the sweetheart he has desired for over a decade. Because of that, most of the people Chris attempts to befriend are girls, with and without boyfriends. In terms of friendships on social media, whenever he feels up the creek without a paddle, Chris will almost always doubt that he is in any way responsible for anyone turning against him because he is too kind for anyone to simply block him on Twitter or to be hated by the masses. Instead, shifts the blame on the trolls. This, coupled with the fact that Chris refuses to see the worst out of his friends unless he gets the hint that they've denied access to their China, makes it sound even more disturbing. Defending others. As mentioned above with the Dopey saga, Chris has a tendency to believe he is doing good when in reality he isn't. A common motivation for doing what he believes to be good is so that he can defend someone he thinks is close to him. Chris has demonstrated this numerous times with his troll-created sweethearts, such as attempting to defend Julie from Clyde Cash in voice chat sessions, then driving all the way to Cleveland in his belief that she would be down there. Chris has also attempted to shift the focus of weaning against Dopey to himself in his Twitter campaign, when in reality, the situation, far less serious than he thought it was, could have been resolved had Chris simply quieted down. How Chris demonstrates kindness. Apologising. As mentioned above, Chris has a very limited understanding of empathy. On the rare occasions in which Chris admits his misdeeds and apologises for them, ulterior motives are usually, if not always, present. This is part of his upbringing, and otherwise due to other such things as autism, all of which limit his ability to understand empathy. Curiously, Chris seems to lack the tendency to over-apologise, a trait known to be found in people on the spectrum. He normally will remain, abstain, and particularly stubborn in his opinions, unless forced to admit that he was wrong, or if apologising for some self-serving purpose. Using pet names. To refer to a gal pal in a kind, non-sexual manner, Chris will often refer to them as either darling or dear. However, since Chris obviously doesn't understand how creepy it is to refer to a girl he's just met online as a darling, most girls who talk to Chris online will be set off by Chris's misuse of the word. Gift giving. Chris has shown several times his belief that kindness can be equated to simply furnishing others with luxuries such as video games, movies, comic books, and other such gifts, not realising that charity alone is not the only virtue required to be considered kind. Perhaps the most noticeable instance of this happening was during his friendship with Megan, in which he carried out a protracted program of gift giving, practically right up to the moment it all came crashing down. The idea guys manipulated this aspect of Chris's beliefs in kindness to have him extorted into providing them with vast sums of money alongside brand new video games and consoles, as revealed in invoices provided by Chris to the guard dogs during the early stages of Operation Kingsnake. Genuine acts of kindness. During the Liquid Chris saga, Chris wanted to get Liquid arrested, and therefore placing him in prison. However, after talking with Casey, he decided that he would hate to see you in jail, out of respect and of care, because she would be heartbroken. It's worth mentioning that only a few seconds later, he threatens to get him tried in court, so this should be taken with a grain of salt. Once participated in raising funds for Alex's Lemonade Stand, a charity program that works to raise awareness of childhood cancer. Although he did it in the memory of his deceased father, who actually passed away as a result of a heart disease rather than cancer, it was still considered a positive contribution Chris made to society. He also donated to Red Cross in the wake of the Hurricane Harvey in September 2017.